The night the sky went silent, everyone in Nikala knew something was wrong. The cattle lay still, the drums stopped, and even the wind refused to move. By morning, half the men who went to the hills had not come back. People whispered that the land had turned against them, and somewhere, in a small hut at the edge of the village, a poor boy named Tunde sat alone, holding a broken drum that would soon decide the fate of them all. Nakala was a small village surrounded by dry fields and tall trees that seemed older than memory. The people lived off what the earth gave them: corn, goats, and the little water that came when the rains remembered them. Every morning began with smoke rising from cooking fires and the sound of children laughing as they chased each other through the dust. In that village lived a boy named Tunde. He had no father, only his mother, who made mats and sold them in the market. Other boys trained to throw spears or herd cattle. Tunde carried no weapon. He only carried his drum, a small one his mother made from a gourd and old skin. He would sit under the tree near the river and play simple rhythms, the kind that made birds stop and listen. Some laughed at him. They said, "Drumming won't fill your stomach." But Tunde's mother always told him, "Every man must listen to his heart. Yours beats in rhythm, my son. Do not be ashamed of it." Life in Kala moved slowly. Days passed in peace until the dry season came and stayed too long. The ground cracked and the wells began to smell of dust. Goats died. The crops shriveled. People began to speak in low voices. Something in the air had changed. One morning, before the sun rose, a deep sound came from the hills, like thunder, but not thunder. The elders said it was the mountain calling. They gathered under the big tree and sent the strongest men to see what was happening. The men took their spears and left before sunrise. The village waited. They did not return that day. They did not return the next. On the third day, a single man came back, limping and weak. His eyes looked empty. He said the hills were no longer safe, that a shadow had covered the springs and the water had turned black. He spoke the name Odu, and then he fell silent forever. The people began to panic. Some wanted to leave. Others blamed the gods. The elders said the drought was punishment for something forgotten, and that Odu, the dark spirit of silence, had come to claim the land. From that day, no one played music, no drums, no song, no laughter. They feared the sound would anger the spirit more. But in the corner of the village, Tunde still tapped his drum lightly at night. Just a few beats, soft as a whisper. He said it helped him remember the world was still alive. His mother warned him to stop, but she couldn't take the drum away. It was the only king he had left of his father. Weeks passed. The land grew quieter. The people stopped talking after dark. And then, one night, Tunde woke to a strange feeling. The air was heavy, and the moonlight seemed too bright. His drums sat beside him. It was shaking. He thought it was the wind, but there was no wind. Then he heard a low hum, deep inside the drum, like a voice trying to speak. "Tunde," it said. He froze. The sound came again, clearer this time. "Your heart is strong. Do not fear what others fear." Tunde almost dropped the drum. He wanted to run to his mother, but something inside told him to listen. "Tomorrow," the voice said, "the elders will call for another sacrifice. Go to the hills before they do. The land must hear your rhythm." Tunde didn't sleep that night. He sat outside, staring at the hills, wondering if he was losing his mind. But when morning came, the elders gathered the people and said, "We must send another group. This time, We will take the young ones too. Tunde looked at his mother. Her face was pale. She held his drum in her hands and whispered, "If your heart tells you to go, then go. But do not forget who you are." He took the drum, tied it around his shoulder, and walked toward the hills alone. No one tried to stop him. They just watched in silence, as if they already knew he would not return. Tunde reached the foot of the hills just before night. The air was dry and cold, and the stones under his feet felt sharp. He was tired, hungry and scared, but he didn't stop. The sky above him was clear and wide, with the moon hanging low, bright enough to see his shadow stretch across the ground. He found an old tree that had lost all its leaves and sat beneath it. He placed the drum on his knees and stared at it. It looked the same as always, cracked, dull, worn out from years of use. But when the wind passed, he heard something faint, like a heartbeat. He leaned closer. The sound came from the drum. At first, he thought it was his imagination. Then, he heard a voice, quiet, slow, and deep. It said, "Tunde." He jumped, looking around, but there was no one there. Only the empty land and the cold night. The voice came again from inside the drum. "Tunde, do not run. I am here." His hands shook. "Who are you?" he whispered. The voice said, "I am what you carry. I am your father's rhythm. I am the sound the land has forgotten." Tunde wanted to drop the drum and run back home, but the voice grew softer, almost kind. "Your beats with the ancestors," it said. "Do not fear what lives within you. Fear what happens if the rhythm dies." Tunde's eyes filled with tears. He thought of his mother, of the dry fields, of the people who had gone to the hills and never returned. "What do I do?" he asked. The drum replied, "Drum your fear into courage." He didn't understand what it meant, but his hands began to move. At first they trembled. The sound that came out was uneven, weak. But as he played, the rhythm grew steadier, like footsteps on a hard ground. The air changed. The hills began to echo with the beat. And for the first time in months, the land answered back. A faint rumble under the soil. He stopped, frightened again, but the voice said, "Don't stop now." He hit the drum harder. The echo grew stronger. Then the ground shook once, and from somewhere deep in the darkness, something moved. Tunde froze. The echo faded. The night went still again. "You have woken what sleeps," said a voice. "Now, you must face it." Tunde looked toward the top of the hill. The path ahead was dark, the kind of dark that made your chest tight. But he stood up anyway. He held the drum close to his chest and began to climb. With each step, the voice grew quieter, until all he could hear was his own breathing and the faint beat of the drum against his ribs. The higher he climbed, the more he thought about turning back. He thought of his mother waiting, maybe praying he would come home, but something in his chest, maybe courage, maybe something else, kept him walking. When he reached the top, he saw what looked like a cave carved into the side of the hill. The mouth of it was wide and black. The air that came out was cold and wet, like breath. He stood there for a long time, unsure if he should go in. Then he remembered what the drum had said, "Drum your fear into courage." He lifted it, took a deep breath, and struck it once. The sound rolled across the hills like thunder. And from inside the cave, a voice answered. Not human, not kind. It said his name. The sound that came from the cave was low and rough, like a growl mixed with a man's voice. It called again, "Tunde." He stood very still, clutching his drum. His mouth was dry and his legs felt weak, but he forced himself to answer. "Who are you?" he shouted. The voice came back, slower this time. I am the thirst of your people. I am the hunger of this land. The sound rolled over him, shaking the ground. Pebbles slipped down from the rocks above. He took a step back, then stopped. He knew running would not save him. If you are hunger, he said, then tell me what you want. For a moment, there was no answer. Only silence, heavy and deep. Then the voice said, I want what was forgotten. The sound that once fed the earth. Tunde looked down at the drum in his hands. He thought of the years when the village danced after harvest, when the elders beat the drums until the air itself seemed to breathe. But those days were gone. The drums had been quiet for too long. You mean the rhythm? He whispered. The voice did not answer. The air inside the cave moved, slow and cold, as if to heal itself had sighed. Tunde stepped closer. Each step echoed. He raised his drum and struck it once, then again. The sound filled the space. The ground shook harder now, and from the darkness came a shape, not clear, not solid, but something that seemed to shift like smoke. It had no eyes, but Tunde could feel it watching him. His hands trembled, but he remembered the drum's words. Drum your fear into courage. So he began to play, slowly, steadily. The rhythm was uneven at first, but it grew stronger with each beat. The shape flinched, twisting like wind-blown ash. Stop, it said, but he didn't stop. He hit the drum harder. The echoes bounced off the hills. It felt like the land itself was breathing again. You think you can feed them with noise? The voice roared. Tunde shouted back, It's not noise, it's life. The wind burst out of the cave, knocking him to his knees. Dust filled his eyes. He kept drumming, blind, coughing, tears streaming down his face. The rhythm wavered, but didn't stop. With every beat, he remembered faces his mother, the children, the men who never came back. He remembered his father, who used to drum at night before the wars. You will fail, the voice growled. Maybe, Tunde said, but I will try. The drum grew warm under his hands, almost hot. Then came a crack, not from the sky, but from deep inside the earth. Water burst through the ground near his feet, muddy at first, then clear. Tunde stared, stunned. The sound he made was waking something beneath the soil. He didn't understand how, but he could feel it. The land was answering. The dark shape inside the cave began to shrink, breaking apart like smoke caught in sunlight. It screamed once, not in anger, but in pain. Then it was gone. Tunde sat there in the mud, breathing hard. The water flowed around his legs, washing away the dust. His drum was cracked again, a thin line down the side, but still whole enough to play. He looked up at the sky. Clouds were gathering. For the first time in months, he smelled rain. He laughed a weak, shaky laugh, then began to cry. He didn't know if the spirit was truly gone or just resting. He didn't know if he had done something good or made a mistake. But the sound of running water was enough to keep him there until morning. When the sun came up, he stood and looked toward home. Smoke rose from the huts. In the distance, people were waking. He lifted his drum one more time and played a simple rhythm, one his father had taught him long ago. The hills carried it back to him, soft and steady, like a heartbeat. And far below, in the village, people came out of their huts. They heard the sound and began to weep. The children pointed to the sky. It was turning gray. The first drops of rain fell. The rain started slowly, one drop at a time, until the ground turned dark and soft. Tunde stood there for a while, too tired to move, letting the water wash over him. It ran down his face, his arms, his drum. The cracked skin on the drum swelled and tightened again, as if it were healing itself. He took it as a sign to go home. The walk back to the village felt longer than the climb up the hill. His clothes were soaked and the path had turned to mud. Every few steps he slipped, but he kept moving. The drum hung heavy on his shoulder. When he reached the edge of Nkala, the sun was pushing through the clouds. People had come out of their huts, faces lifted to the sky, mouths open to catch the rain. They were laughing and crying at the same time. Some were kneeling in the mud, thanking the heavens. Then someone saw him. "It's Tunde!" they shouted. Heads turned. They saw the boy they had laughed at, the one who had gone into the hills with only a drum, walking back through the rain. His mother ran to him first. She was crying before she reached him. She touched his face, then the drum. "You did this?" she asked, her voice shaking. Tunde didn't know what to say. He only shook his head and whispered, "I just played." The elders came next. The robes were wet and heavy. One of them said, "We sent strong men with weapons and none returned. You went with nothing but sound." And the sky has answered, "Tell us what you saw." Tunde told them everything: the cave, the voice, the water from the ground. Some listened in silence. Some didn't believe him, but they could not deny what they saw above them. Clouds still rolling, rivers forming again in the dry earth. That night, the people gathered under the big tree in the center of the village. They lit a fire even though the rain still fell. The elders brought out the old drums that had been hidden away. They asked Tunde to play first. He sat down, placed his drum on his lap, and began to play a slow, steady rhythm, the same one that had come to him in the hills. The sound spread through the air. It was not loud, but it was strong. Children clapped their hands. Women hummed. Men joined in, beating their own drums softly at first, then louder. The whole village moved together, not in wild joy, but in deep relief, like people waking from a long nightmare. The rhythm seemed to remind them of something they had forgotten, that the earth listens when people play together. When the fire burned low, an elder stood up and said, "This boy has brought back what we lost. From today, his drum will never be called small again." They named him the Rhythm Warrior, not because he had fought with a spear, but because he had fought fear itself and won. That night, Tunde lay beside his mother. He could hear the rain on the roof, steady and calm. She turned to him and said, "You did what your father could not. You gave life back to this place." Tunde didn't feel like a hero. He only felt tired. He closed his eyes and listened to the sound of rain mixing with the faint beat of drums outside. It was the same rhythm that had followed him all his life. Now it belonged to everyone. By morning, the air smelled of wet earth and smoke. The fields were soft again, ready for planting. The people went to work, singing for the first time in months. As Tunde walked through the village, children followed him, copying his steps, pretending to play drums of their own. He smiled but said nothing. He didn't need to. From that day, no one mocked a drummer in Nkala again. The elders taught the young ones to play, saying, "When you keep the rhythm alive, you keep the land alive." And sometimes, on quiet nights, when the wind moved through the trees, Tunde could still hear that old voice from the hills, not warning him, not calling his name, just humming along with the sound of his drum. It was no longer a spirit or a curse. It was the heartbeat of the land, finally at peace. Of course, no fancy words, no supernatural exaggeration, just a believable tale told with the calm voice of an elder who has seen many seasons pass. Seasons passed, and the village of Nakala changed. The land healed. The fields grew thick again, and the rivers stayed full. The people rebuilt their huts, stronger this time. They said the ground itself felt different, softer, kinder. Tunde grew into a young man. He was no longer called the poor boy. He was the one everyone went to when the sky turned dry, when fear crept in again. They said his drumming could steady the heart and calm the air. But Tunde never spoke of himself as special. When people thanked him, he only said, "The land listens when we listen to it." Every evening, after the day's work, the village gathered under the same big tree. Tunde sat at the center, the same cracked drum across his knees. He would tap it lightly, 1 beat, 2 beats, and the children would fall silent, waiting for the story they had all heard before, but never grew tired of. He told them how fear had tried to stop him, how his hands had shaken so much he could hardly play. He told them that courage is not the absence of fear, but moving anyway, one small step, one small beat at a time. When he spoke, even the elders listened. They had seen strong men with weapons fall, yet the boy with a drum had saved them. As years went by, people from other villages came to hear the story and to learn the rhythm he played in the hills. They called it the Song of Water. It was slow and deep, the kind of rhythm that makes you feel the ground move beneath your feet. Soon, the story spread far beyond Nkala. Traders carried it along the dusty roads. Travelers told it by campfires. Each version changed a little, but the heart stayed the same. A poor boy, a forgotten sound, and the courage to keep going when no one else would. Many years later, when Tunde's hair turned gray, he still played. His hands were rough and old, but his rhythm never faded. One evening, as the sun set red behind the hills, he sat outside his hut, drumming quietly. His mother had long passed, and the children he had once taught were grown with families of their own. The air was warm. The wind carried the smell of rain again. He smiled. The land was alive. He struck the drum one last time, a soft, steady beat, the same rhythm that had saved them all. Then he closed his eyes and rested. The next morning, when the people came to greet him, he was gone. The drum lay beside him, whole again, no cracks, no tears. They buried him under the big tree where he had once played. That night, the entire village gathered. No one spoke for a long time. Then one child, the youngest among them, picked up a small drum and began to play. Softly, uncertainly. Another joined in, then another. Soon, everyone was drumming, the rhythms blending into one long living sound. The elders said it was Tunde's spirit, keeping time with them from the hills. Others said it was just the wind, but it didn't matter. What mattered was that the people of Nkala never stopped playing again. They taught their children that strength can wear many faces: a sword, a word, or a drum. And whenever drought came or fear returned, they gathered under the big tree, lifted their hands, and let the rhythm speak. They said it was the heartbeat of the land. They said it was the song of Tunde the boy, who listened when no one else would. And even now, when the night is quiet and the wind passes through the trees, you can still hear it. If you listen carefully, the sound of a drum somewhere in the distance, steady and sure, reminding the world that courage begins with one small beat.